Hey everybody. So thought I'd do, we are, we're already in November. So we're really like a month out before all these publications start racing each other to be the first to put out their best albums of 2023. I did a video back in the summer at some point talking about just some 2023 releases that I'd picked up so far in the year. And I just wanted to go ahead and do another one because I will be doing like a year-end video of my favorite albums of 2023. I usually always do that. I wanted to talk about some that I've picked up since the last video back in the summer because they just might not show up in that best of, but I still want to talk about them. So that's what we're here to do. Now, one album that I actually had when I recorded that last video, but I forgot to talk about it, is this one. This is End of Everything by Megabog. Megabog is the project of Erin Bergy. Her last two records have been on the label Paradise of Bachelors. This one is on Mexican Summer. As she has progressed, as an artist, she's kind of gotten into bigger sounds, or at least more illustrious arrangements. Kind of gets into kind of like this territory of kind of art rock with somewhat of a prog sensibility. Yeah, not prog in the sense of like Yes and Gentle Giant or whatever, but progressive art rock. And this record has elements of that as well. But it also has a strong kind of like 80s kind of new wave vibe to it. Some of these songs are really, really catchy, actually, and that's new for her, to me as a listener. Yeah, End of Everything by Megabog on Mexican Summer.
Ghosts of all the desert bugs under purple pen. Picture your favorite friend, grabbing up all of the stones we like and jump back in bed. I want to leave tonight. Should I just sleep tonight or leave tonight?
Now, this is an album that's actually been out since January. I was streaming it a good bit, and I finally decided to pick it up on vinyl. It's The Raven by Kalila. It's on Warp Records. So her last record was in 2017, I believe. And I was a fan of that record. When I saw that she'd put out a new one, I was immediately, enticed to listen to it. And it's a really good album. It's really long. That's the one thing that I will say. It's about an hour's worth of music. And I will concede that it's a bit samey from start to finish. But the sound is so cool. Electronic driven R&B, but there's elements of jazz and kind of like a silky soul, kind of like Sade. It's more modern, very contemporary sounding R&B. But again, yeah, it can sound a little samey, but I still strongly recommend it. Now, this is a fall release by drummer Yusuf Days, Black Classical Music. This is on Nonsuch, and he's from the London jazz scene that has kind of like exploded over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. But this is his first record that is credited solely to him. And again, this is a long one. It's a double LP. It's over an hour's worth of music, but it's just full of infectious grooves. Jazz, funk, there's Latin tinge stuff, there's kind of Afro-Cuban, Afrobeat at times even, a little bit of some nods to hip hop. This is an absolutely incredible record. I mentioned Paradise of Bachelors, the record label in North Carolina, and this releases off of that. The group is called Setting. Now, I bought this mostly because of the guys that are on it. It's Nathan Bowles, Jamie Fennelly, and Joe Westerlin. Now, mostly Joe Westerlin. I'm very familiar with Joe Westerlin. He was in the band Megaphon. He plays on a lot of stuff, kind of like as a session drummer for a lot of bands and artists that live in specifically the Durham Chapel Hill area in North Carolina. Now, the hype sticker for this record mentions bands like Poplar, Harmonia, the ambient works of Brian Eno. It's definitely inspired by that. What you have here is 4 songs that approach a little bit over 40 minutes in length total. And it's ambient, droney at times, very percussion driven though. There's instrumentation that's a little bit more organic, a little bit more string based. Where I struggle with albums like this is, do I really need something like this, or can I just go backwards and listen to the music that inspired it? I'm happy to support this label and these musicians, so I think it's a really good record, and I think that it's definitely worth checking out. Is it anything that's going to be like, oh, this is completely groundbreaking music? Probably not. It's inspired though, for sure. Now, this next record is a debut by a supergroup of sorts. It's a bluegrass record. Members of Watch House, Leftover Salmon, and Punch Brothers. And the album is Mighty Poplar by Mighty Poplar. It's Andrew Marlin, Alex Hargraves, Noam Pakilny, Chris Eldridge, and Greg Garrison. Now, Andrew Marlin is the mandolin player from Watch House, which is an acoustic duo formerly known as Mandolin Orange out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And all these other guys he pulled together from all of their assorted bands and acts that they play with. And it's basically a traditional bluegrass record. The one thing that keeps it from being traditional is kind of Andrew Marlin's vocals, really. They're not your typical bluegrass vocal style. He has a very laid back, kind of more just kind of singer-songwriter, popular folk music kind of voice. Most of them are traditional songs. Some of them are covers. There's like Let 'Em Go on Mama by John Hartford, North Country Blues by Bob Dylan. It's a beautiful sounding record. I love the tone of it. For someone like me, who kind of rides that line of Americana and alt country and dabbles in bluegrass, it's an outstanding record.
Well, that grave on the hillside is long overgrown. It's been 22 years since I gathered stones, and 22 more since I made her my bride. And the springtime's coming up on the divide. The springtime's coming up on the divide.
Speaking of Andrew Marlin, he produced this next artist's debut record, but this is her third LP, Rachel Bayman. She's actually new to me. I discovered her for the first time this year. Read some really positive reviews about this album. I listened to a podcast that she was a guest on, loved the songs that I heard, and decided to check out the record. And upon my very first stream, I immediately ordered it on vinyl. And one of the first things that I heard was the track Self-Made Man, partially crafted song by John Hartford. I've heard that version before. I believe it was technically an unfinished track. And so she decided to record it. She added some lyrics to it and filled in a little bit of melody on it as well. She is hugely influenced by John Hartford and also Gillian Welch. So that's why I love this record so much. It's taken Gillian Welch, I mean, her last record was 2011, if you don't count the ones that she worked with David Rawlings on, or the covers record that came out, in the last few years. And so this kind of helps scratch that itch that I have for a new Gillian Welch record. But I like Rachel Bayman on her own. I don't need her to be a consolation prize or anything. This is an outstanding record, one of my favorites this year for sure.
How many men do you think it takes to make a self-made man? How many fingers must he step on to do the best he can? Have you watched his eyes when he deals you cards? Do you know the other players in his life? Have you ever seen the bones his closet holds? Do you watch him when he sharpens his knife? How many men do you think it takes to make a self-made man?
So those of you that keep score at home on new releases by me, I talk a lot about the label Bobo Integral. And this year they have put out a lot of material and a lot of really good material. And this album is strong as well. It's the band Colored Lights. Some of you that watch my channel and Sam probably saw him talk about this. I don't know how to say the guy's name. Frode Stromstad, I guess, is the principal songwriter. This is a band of Norwegian musicians. He's worked with Scott McCoy, Peter Buck. He plays in that band, what is it, The Ones. And this album is reminds me a lot of kind of like the 90s kind of power pop, right? It has that kind of sunshiny kind of sound that a lot of bands were doing back then, where they were emulating the Beach Boys. It also kind of reminds me at times of like Teenage Fan Club. What's really interesting about this record is that it's 15 songs, but it's like, I think even under 30 minutes long. And they're not quite memorable as standalone songs, but when you hear the album in its full context, it really, really works. I mean, there are a lot of songs on here. Most of the songs, I don't even know if there's even like a real chorus, it's just a verse, and that's what makes it stand out from a lot of the other music that sounds like this. In a way, it's kind of like Guided by Voices, where it has these songs that, I don't know, you kind of question if they're really finished or not. I think it's a really enjoyable record. Again, it's kind of hard for it to sink in though, because of how short everything is and how it kind of runs together. So I wouldn't say it's one of my favorite releases of the year, but it's definitely worth holding on to. And there are certain songs that do stand out the more I listen to it.
No one is nice when you're feeling this hungry. Cut up your world into and work with the things you are. Seeking what you know isn't fair.
And then at the beginning of last month, Sufjan Stevens' new album, Javelin, came out. Now, I'm a big fan of Sufjan Stevens. I think anybody with my music taste is a big fan of Sufjan Stevens. I've been listening to him for 20 years now, maybe a little bit over that. Now, a lot of his more recent work, I haven't really been drawn to as much. His last full length especially was a little kind of all over the place. I prefer his more acoustic driven music, like Carrie and Lowell, which was a beautiful album for 2015. And you get a little bit more of that feel predominantly on this record, but then he also does mix in the kind of big choral vocal arrangements and a little bit of electronics. But all in all, it still feels more like his folkier stuff, and I think that's why that's what I love about it the most. But yeah, it's nothing brand new from Sufjan Stevens. It's just what he does really, really well. Okay, and the last one that I'm going to talk about is it's this band's first album in 18 years. I think it shocked a lot of people that bought it when they first heard it. Of course, I'm talking about the American Analog Set and For Forever, the Austin indie rock band. Again, their first record in 18 years. Dom was the one who tipped me onto this. I had no idea it was even coming out. And honestly, if he hadn't messaged me, it would have gotten right past me because there was hardly any press on it. I think Pitchfork did actually mention, did do a little blurb, so I maybe would have read it there. This was quite a surprise listening to this. I purposefully stayed away from streaming it until I got the physical copy and could sit down and kind of spin it. And right away, right out of the gate, this heavy kind of fuzz sounding bass, just not at all normally what you would hear from American Analog Set. Now, their bass is prominent, their bass parts are prominent in their earlier work, but totally different tone than what you get out of the gate on this record. And I've said this before, I've said it on Instagram, I said it in a message when I was talking to Dom about it. It's a very muscular effort from this band that is known for this very laid back, chill kind of vibe, you know, on all of their previous records. This is as close as they've ever been to like a real rock band, like just a in-your-face rock band. That's just, it's louder. It's American Analog Set kind of like turned up to 11, which is still about like a 6 or a 7 for a lot of other rock bands. And it was the songs that sounded furthest away from their previous output that I was drawn more to, because it's like, this is completely new. I don't know if they're inspired by kind of like the times, you know, the turbulent kind of times that we live in. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what's pushing this. Now they had been working on this record since 2015, I think. And then it got postponed because of the pandemic, and then they held on to it for a little while longer. I don't know, but I think it's a really good record. I think that anybody that's an American Analog Set fan has probably already gotten their hands on this because I believe it's sold out everywhere. But I would definitely check it out. If anything that I've said here interests you, probably not. Most of what I say doesn't interest anybody. But yeah, For Forever, the American Analog Set.
To debt to fall forever over lies and lust. You can bet that we're the ones we're owing. 'Cause they draw a line with my name below it. And that's why the name they use it hurt, don't it?
So that's it. Just some more 2023 releases. Not everything that I have bought this year. Maybe 1 or 2 of those will show up in my year-end video when I do it. There will be some records in that video that I haven't talked about. Hope everybody's doing well. All right. Cheers.
Digital gramophone makes no sense.